Unstoppable villains just aren't fair, right? Hey everyone, welcome back to The Binger. Marvel has a long-standing tradition of making some incredible villains that seem unbeatable until they hit a wall. Sure, you can't have every superhero off the street beating their foes easily, but you at least need a plausible explanation for how they were able to pull off the win. As you'll see, some villains' weaknesses are based in self-preservation, and others are based on the tech or power that gives the villain their superhuman abilities in the first place. But no matter what the limitations are, one thing is for sure, they are all definitely weird. So without further ado, here are the Marvel villains with weird power restrictions. Juggernaut. Let's start this off with a bruiser of a villain, the fan favorite Juggernaut. He's had an extensive career in Marvel, whether it be terrorizing the X-Men on film, ripping Deadpool in half, or popping up in video games and cartoons. The most commonly agreed upon backstory for our subject is an interesting one. Real name, Cain Marko. Juggernaut is said to be the stepbrother of X-Men architect Charles Xavier. Apparently, he resented Charles and developed a bullying attitude that evidently never went away. When the two served in Korea together, Marko discovered a hidden temple, and inside, a mystical ruby. He then read the inscription on it, which said, "Whosoever touches this gem shall be granted the power of the crimson bands of Cyttorak. Henceforth, you who read these words shall become, forevermore, a human juggernaut." This caused a cave-in that buried him alive, which led to Xavier leaving him behind. Now, if you know siblings, they tend to fight. It doesn't matter if you're in the backseat of a car fighting for elbow room, or if you're a superpowered being fighting for control of the planet. And these two brothers are no different. So naturally, after escaping his rock imprisonment, Marko, now known as the Juggernaut, went after his brother and the X-Men. All this hulking power, a chaotic, unstoppable force, it's hard to believe that anything could stop him. But he actually has two very large power restrictions that he must adhere to. First of all, remember that gem that gave Marko his powers? Well, that power doesn't necessarily stay with Mr. Marko permanently. It was bestowed upon him by the gem, which is a conduit of the chaotic being Cyttorak. This being gave him near invulnerability, super strength, his armor, amongst other things. But it demands that the user of the Juggernaut avatar be sufficiently chaotic to keep Cyttorak at bay. The powers can be taken away at any time, and in fact in the comics, his power has been stripped away on multiple occasions. Another limitation he has goes back to brotherly love. We know that Professor X has the uncanny ability of telepathy, and with this comes the ability to stop most forces of evil if given the chance. We know Magneto wears a helmet designed to block this power, but so does Juggernaut. So if the helmet gets removed from his head, he's susceptible to Xavier's powers and rendered useless. So essentially for Juggernaut to be his most effective self, he needs to keep the chaos in high gear, keep going berserk, and stay far, far away from any flying X-Men who might snag off his helmet. Sebastian Shaw. Speaking of helmets, if you've ever seen the awesome X-Men First Class, you already know a lot about this next villain and his helmet. Used as an origin story for the X-Men, First Class established Shaw as an unstoppable villain that would inadvertently give Magneto the upper hand in the Xavier showdowns in the future. Although he was expertly played by Kevin Bacon in the film, certain fans will have remembered this villain from the comics, as he debuted all the way back in 1980. Although the two versions of the character differ a bit, they both share in common the ability to absorb and channel energy. He can absorb the power from kinetic energy, electricity, bullets, and energy beams, you name it. And after he absorbs them, he uses that energy to make himself stronger. So, as long as there is any movement, he can use that against others. So if he takes enough blows from an opponent, he could hypothetically become unstoppable. He's even been known to overpower Colossus, which is no easy feat to say the least. But even though his mutant ability gives him immense power, it can also be his undoing. For example, not engaging with him while he's alone gives him limited options. In the comics, he's known to keep henchmen around to pummel him to start his day, so he can carry around a sufficient amount of power. It's not known exactly how long he can hold on to the power, but he needs to always be getting attacked to maintain his edge. He's been defeated temporarily in the comics by being tossed way into the sky, thus removing him from the playing field. He was also frozen out by Storm, which made him flee to recover. And in the movie version, he's weak to telepathy as well, hence that wonderful helmet of his. Once it's removed, Charles is able to telepathically free Shaw while Magneto very slowly pushes a coin into his head. Because there's so little energy, there's little to react to. Shaw undeniably has an incredible mutant ability, and its only undoing is itself. A poetic justice. Thanos. Now, the Thanos from the MCU is almost as close to unbeatable as it gets. In fact, he did outright win, and it took a lot of confusing time travel and a rat hitting the right buttons for everything to be only partially fixed, not to mention the chaotic aftermath of half the planet coming back to life. But that's a topic for another video. The Thanos that we're referring to here is mainly the one from the Marvel Comics. This Thanos is motivated not by the survival of life, by eliminating half of it. No. This guy is motivated by unrequited love. And yes, this is definitely a power restriction. Hear us out. The Mad Titan falls for Lady Death, who is the mistress and personification of death itself. His overarching goal throughout much of the comics is simply to impress her through his deeds. The supreme intelligence, cunning, and strength all exist as a means to destroy for her approval. In fact, he even took out millions of his own race just looking for praise from her, and it would be all for naught. This ego-fueled romp has caused Thanos to lose his Infinity Gauntlet in the past as well. And in the storyline event Thanos Wins, he was actually able to take out almost everyone in the universe. And after that, he still was blown off by Lady Death. It's wild to imagine somebody as powerful as Thanos being defeated by his heart and obsession. But hey, that's the way love goes, I guess. Grandmaster. A simple game of chance. It seems harmless enough, but for the villain, the Grandmaster, it's always about life and death. This godlike alien villain is obsessed with pitting unwilling players against each other to the death. You may remember his appearance in Thor Ragnarok, played hilariously by Jeff Goldblum, but the Grandmaster from the comics is about 100 times more sadistic. While they both force players to fight to the death, comics Grandmaster seems to revel in their destruction. He's also a member of the powerful Elders of the Universe, which are essentially gods, and Grandmaster is the god of games appropriately. Now, Grandmaster does have one big problem though, and it's appropriate too. Just like the poetic justice to Sebastian Shaw's undoing, Grandmaster falls into the same category. Even though he can use people throughout the universe as pawns in his games, he better not let them win under any circumstances. It's said that he acquired his powers with a certain set of conditions. If he's ever to be defeated, then the winner is the new Master of Games, thus eliminating every power the Grandmaster possesses. That includes his Master Strength, his immortality, energy control, and much more. So what does all this boil down to? Even though he has the ability to trick people and manipulate heroes into life or death games, he may want to pump the brakes a bit, because if he happens to pick the wrong hero and they're able to win, then bye-bye powers. Galactus. So here he is, the big baddie, the rumored villain for Marvel Phase 4, Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. If there was ever an enemy who seemed unbeatable, it's gotta be him. Thanos is one tough cookie, sure, but he isn't on the level of Galactus. Now, if Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet, that's an entirely different story. But without it, being able to literally eat worlds puts you in a different category, sorry. Now, Galactus has been beaten before in the comics, and it didn't come easily. But even this monster has a restriction on his power that you wouldn't necessarily think of right away. You know when you haven't eaten anything for a while and you start to feel weak? Well, Galactus gets that way too. Except he can't run down to the store and grab a bag of Doritos. No, he has to eat an entire world. Malnourishment seems like a funny way to beat the villain, but it actually works. For example, Reed Richards was able to do just that when he sent Galactus into the negative zone. All planets there were comprised solely of negative energy, which Galactus just can't eat. It would be the equivalent of a human being drinking a large cup of nuclear waste. No thank you. So without the sustenance of his food, he grows weaker and weaker until he can be defeated by the Marvel heroes. We know it almost seems too easy, but when you're that big, having access to reliable food sources is obviously a problem. It kinda humanizes the big guy in a way, huh? And that reminds me, I've gotta go make myself a sandwich. Well, that wraps this video up. So what do you think? Were the power restrictions on these villains justified? Or did Marvel make a mistake holding them back? Let us know down in the comment section. And be sure to let us know if we missed any too. And before you go, do me a big favor and give this video a thumbs up. And hit that subscribe button too, so you don't miss any awesome content from The Binger. Until next time, thanks for watching.